how to deduce the formula of an ionic compound for Cambridge IGCSE Chemistry. So you are expected to deduce the formula of an ionic compound from diagrams and pictures of models and from the ion charges involved. So let's start with ionic compound formulae from diagrams and models, recalling that ionic compounds form giant lattices which contain a large number of ions, and therefore the formula of an ionic compound is an empirical formula, a simplest whole number ratio between each type of ion. So let's look at an example, magnesium oxide. We need to count up the oxygen or the oxide ions and count up the magnesium ions, which are blue in my diagram. In my diagram, I've got 13 magnesium ions and 14 oxide ions. Well, that means the magnesium to oxygen ratio is 13 to 14. The simplest whole number ratio is 1 to 1, bearing in mind this is just a small section of the giant lattice. So we write the formula of magnesium oxide using the empirical formula, the simplest whole number ratio, 1 magnesium to 1 oxygen, MgO, the empirical formula. So here is a problem for you to try. What is the empirical formula of this ionic iron disulfide? So the sulfur particles are the pale orange, the iron are reddish. What is the empirical formula of this ionic compound? Stop the class, restart when you have your answer. Okay, so I'm going to restart. I count up 14 iron particles, 26 separate sulfurs or 13 pairs called disulfides. So we've got 14 iron to 26 sulfur, which makes the nearest whole number ratio 1 to 2, the empirical formula FeS2. Let's look at obtaining the ionic compound formulae from ion charges. The important principle is that the ion charges within a compound sum to 0, add up to 0. So let's look at sodium oxide, or sodium and oxygen. The sodium ion is Na+, the oxide ion is 2-. We add 1+ to a 2-, it doesn't come to 0. So we have +1 and -2. We need a second sodium ion. We add +1 and -2, those sum to 0. So our formula, 2 sodiums and 1 oxygen. I'll do another example. Calcium hydroxide. Calcium is a 2+ ion, it's in group 2. Hydroxide OH is a 1- ion. I need 2 hydroxides to sum to 0. +2 -1 -1 sums to 0. So we write that as a formula, 1 calcium, 2 hydroxides. We indicate that by placing hydroxide inside a bracket and a subscript 2 outside. So 2 hydroxides, place the hydroxide inside the bracket and subscript 2. But the important thing is that the calcium 2+ and the 2 hydroxide ions, their charges sum to 0. So we need to know the ion charges, and we can obtain a number of them from the group number in the periodic table. Group number 1, for instance, containing sodium and potassium, all ions formed are 1+. Group 2, all ions are 2+. Aluminium in group 3 is a 3+ ion. In group 5, nitrogen and phosphorus 3-. Group 6, oxygen and sulfur 2-. All element ions in group 7 are 1-. And we can assume, unless we are told differently, that transition metals form 2+ ions, except for silver, which is a 1+ ion. So here are some problems. What are the formulae of sodium iodide, zinc chloride, aluminium oxide, calcium sulfide, and silver chloride? stop the class, deduce the ionic formulae from the ion charges, come back to check when you are ready. Okay, so I'm going to work our way through. NaI, sodium is a 1 plus ion, iodide is 1 minus, so those sum to 0. Zinc chloride, well, zinc is a transition metal, so it's a 2 plus ion, so I need 2 chlorides at 1 minus to sum to 0. Aluminium oxide, a little bit more tricky. Aluminium is a 3 plus ion, so I've got 2 of those, so that will come to 6 plus in total. So I need 3 times oxide at 2 minus to give me 6 minus. So that will give me Al2O3, 2 aluminiums and 3 oxygens. Calcium sulfide, please note sulfide, a calcium ion in group 2, a sulfur ion in group 6. One of each sums to 0. Silver is the exceptional transition metal. It's a 1 plus ion. So combine that with a chloride at 1 minus, sums to 0. Compound ions contain more than one element. For example, hydroxide you're probably familiar with, an oxygen and a hydrogen within the one ion, the hydroxide ion, with a charge of 1 minus. You need to know the name, the formula and the charge of the compound ions. The nitrate, 1 nitrogen and 3 oxygens, a 1 minus ion. Carbonate, 1 carbon, 3 oxygens, a 2 minus charge. Sulfate, 1 sulfur, 4 oxygens, a 2 minus charge. Ammonium, 1 nitrogen, 4 hydrogens, a 1 plus charge. You need to recall the correct formula for each named compound ion and the charge so that you can use that charge to deduce the ionic compound formulae. There are some problems on the next slide. So here are some problems involving group ions: sodium hydroxide, sodium sulfate, aluminium nitrate, calcium carbonate, ammonium iodide. Come up with the ionic compound formulae for each of those named compounds. Stop and restart when you are ready to check my answers. Okay, so let's go through one by one. Sodium hydroxide, well, easy one. Sodium is a 1 plus ion. Hydroxide is, of course, a 1 minus according to the table on the previous slide. So one of each will sum to 0. Sodium sulfate, well, we've got 2 sodiums at 1 plus. So we need 1 sulfate because sulfate is a 2 minus ion, SO4 2 minus. So you'll see that sums to 0. Aluminium nitrate, well, aluminium in group 3 is 3 plus. The nitrate is 1 minus. So I need to have 3 of those. So I place nitrate inside the bracket and multiply everything inside the bracket by a 3 with a subscript 3. So 1 aluminium, 3 nitrates, 3 plus and 3 times 1 minus. Next one. Calcium carbonate, relatively easy. Calcium's in group 2, a 2 plus. Carbonate, CO3 is a 2 minus ion. One of each sums to 0. Ammonium iodide, you've got to remember the ammonium is a 1 plus ion. It's the only group or compound ion with a positive charge. Iodide is 1 minus. Those two sum to 0. Well done for finishing. If you need more practice, I would suggest look in your textbook and then past paper questions. There's the physics and maths tutor website. Nothing to do with me, just has unlimited past paper questions. If you'd like some more classes related to this topic, look at the playlist and the links in the video description. If you found this class helpful, please recommend it to a friend. Subscribe for new classes and last-minute exam tips. Please like, and any comments much appreciated.